Erev Tov Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Just a short take of our broadcast this evening. Have several articles up here. Of course, I'm following some different stories in the Russian language, trying to get an idea from opposite side of on this from U.S. take as well. What's going on in Deirdre Ezzor? And I begin to follow this because there has been this report right here coming out on South Front that the U.S.-led coalition bombed the Syrian Military Column near Deirdre Ezzor, according to the local media there in that area. It says the U.S.-led coalition bombed a military column and Syrian government forces near Deirdre Ezzor. Sky News Arabia reported on Monday. We've seen this before. There has been a major battle for the Euphrates River area. The U.S., as we recall, we covered this over a year ago there, when the U.S. coalition forces struck the Syrian Arab army, claiming they were targeting ISIS, but yet after 2 hours of bombing and Russia steadily saying to the U.S., you're bombing the wrong target, they actually had killed many, I think some like 60-something Syrian soldiers that were battling ISIS in that area. Also, it was a point, I believe, to weaken the Syrian Air Force that also had their military air base in that region. One of the big issues for Russia, though, at that time, it never reported by Russia either, but I think 12 special forces of the Russian military that were also operating in that area that were killed. And once again, as we reported recently, the U.S. military has clearly stated that Syria is not to cross. The Syrian Arab army is not to cross the Euphrates River to the eastern side. Very interesting, though, because we also, as I mentioned to you in this report here, this is actually a different report, but it goes again. This Russian report here was speaking about how the Russian-made portable boat system, a pontoon type of boat system, has been brought down to the Euphrates River for the Syrian Arab army to actually be able to cross that river. Now, I don't know what was targeted in this raid, according to South Front, what they're reporting there. Just it was a line of the Syrian Arab army was struck by the coalition forces. They're saying that this was done as a warning to the Syrian Arab army not to cross the river. The U.S. with the Free Syrian Army, different. It's not part of Assad's government's forces. These are the U.S.-backed forces, are supposedly starting a new take on the Deirdre Ezzor, the city of Deirdre Ezzor. That's what's pictured here on your screen right here, showing that the Free Syrian Army as well as the Kurds are working on taking this particular region now. Now, I'm finding all this kind of interesting, and I'm going into a story that I'm kind of working on. I've been putting this together for a little bit that I'm wanting to share with you, hopefully in the next day or so, about why is there such a push for this particular land. Now, the United States on the eastern part of the Euphrates River really is more for strategic placing. We know that the U.S. also has a buffer zone from Al-Tanf on the southern part of Syria moving on down, and even in the northern part of the country of Syria, the U.S. also has forces and allied with the Kurds up in this region of the world. Russia has really just become a thorn in the side for some very deep state plans. And you have to understand, when I'm looking at what the deep state is doing, Rome has a lot to do with what the deep state is actually doing. And so this battle for Syria, and eventually it will be for Lebanon as well, has a very big biblical significance, not so much for biblical prophecy fulfilling, but for a Roman agenda, back to the Babylonian Empire. You have to remember, what did Babylon actually control during the times of Israel's history, when Israel was there in the Promised Land? Babylon actually controlled all the way from the river, the Nile River in Egypt, all the way over to the Euphrates. Why did Babylon have control of that area? It's kind of interesting if you think about it, especially with Israel living in the land. Because the same thing goes even for today. Mystery Babylon is trying to gain control of this whole region once again, and it has a lot to do with the fact that God had promised Abraham for him and his seed that he had given them from the Nile River all the way to the Euphrates River. It was given all to Abraham and his descendants. And oddly enough, Babylon ended up under control of all this region, while Israel sitting in her homeland. Instead of Israel controlling it, Babylon controls it. And we see Babylon rising again, rising its head out of the mud there, a revived Roman Empire, a mystery Babylon, and they are very much at work at getting control over all this land again. So we're going to kind of go into that a little bit more here in the next day or so. I want to bring this out to you. And a couple of other things I want to real quick touch on, and that is also Russia. They are quietly undercutting the sanctions intended to stop North Korea's nuclear program. Seeing as Russia has been hit so hard by the sanctions by the U.S. and, of course, the allies of the U.S., Russia just doesn't play by the rules anymore. They've pretty much given up hope that President Trump can make amends and bring this relationship back together again. So Russia doesn't care at this point. It's quite obvious, and of course, the United Nations unanimously voted to put this tougher sanctions on Kim Jong-un to try to bring him in and stop his nuclear program. And Russia, once again, though, in this case here, has thrown another snag into the program there and is not going along with the plan and is more than willing to still give the oil and the food and everything else that Kim Jong-un needs to keep his program going. That's definitely going to cause the U.S. to have to use military force, which could definitely destabilize the entire region. And one other issue here, too, or two more issues I still want to get to real quick. Algeria is buying over 300 Terminator vehicles from Russia. There's also one story, couldn't find it again, I don't know how it disappeared on my screen there, but it also was another story out there floating around that Russia is possibly selling them the Eiklander. That is a very, very serious missile that can also carry nuclear warheads. Doesn't mean that Russia will sell them nuclear warheads, but it could be fitted with a nuclear warhead, such as the Eiklander inside of Kaliningrad. They are using that particular system there. The Sanhedrin, many of you guys already know about this. They are banning all Messianic Jewish marriages in Israel. Those of you that may know a little bit more about us here on Israeli News Live, we do air on multiple platforms, including Hebrew Nation Radio twice a week. We are on there in a radio broadcast with Bonnie Harvey called Flashpoint. And that's where I went into this subject the other day, a couple of days ago. In fact, we were very in depth over the issue about the Sanhedrin, what they were doing there. And I got into a lot of issues on that. So I want to really kind of go into this a lot deeper than what we realize. This isn't just a ban on the Messianic marriages there. This is clearly part of an agenda. And I have some issues when it comes to the modern day Sanhedrin because, and a lot of Jewish people do, it's just, this is something that has been self-appointed, and now they're passing all these rules. The Gur Hasidim have a lot to do with what's happening with this situation with the Messianic marriages as well. And of course, you have to remember a lot of the Hasidic community has a lot of influence over the government, especially the Likud party, who is very much backed by the ultra-Orthodox in Israel. At least there's a lot of support that the Likud party receives from the ultra-Orthodox. And the Gur community, the Gur Hasidim, also their Polish group, by the way, they are from Poland. They have a lot of influence in New York as well as